So overall, this was a decent fight against Cancer. I definitely dodged a little bit too much, but oh well. And also, you might notice I use Stonebreaker, and if you've been watching my videos before, I have made a previous Stonebreaker build on red prints, but this time it's a fair bit different, and I decided I would use it again on Cancer, this weapon. The main differences being I'm now running Alchemist instead of Invader, and I also now am running Akari's Warband, which I didn't do before, I'm running Butcher's Fetish, which I didn't do before, I'm running Bisected Ring, which I didn't do before, and I can't remember if I ran Flyweight Sting or not, but point is, it's a fairly different build, even if it is based around the same weapon, and I wanted to use a melee build against Cancer, and this is honestly one of the only weapons that can hold up. And if you enjoy this type of video and want to see more, it would be great if you could like and subscribe. So for our weapons, mods, and mutators, obviously this is a Stonebreaker build, so we have to be using Stonebreaker. As I mentioned, I have used this before in a previous build video, but overall I felt it was different enough that it was worth using again to make a different iteration of it. Obviously it is Fault Line, which is incredible, it gives us another second source of damage. It is the highest base damage out of any melee weapon. And obviously we put on Overdrive because stacking crit chance and crit damage every crit hit is so strong. For our long gun, we didn't slot anything, just because I couldn't find anything particularly worth it. I did try using Boar, interestingly enough. It gives a second hitbox to bosses when you put it in, so you can get like double damage per swing, but I couldn't end up consistently hitting it enough to make it worth. And then obviously we use Nebula because we want Corroded to get 10% extra damage, and we just put on Harmonizer for more mod damage, because we just use the mod because it's a passive source of damage. For our archetypes, we use Challenger because it's just king of melee builds with Juggernaut skill because of the ridiculous extra melee damage that it ends up doing. And in our primary slot, we slotted Alchemist. This was mainly so we could get the 4 concoctions, which is its prime perk, because we want concoctions to make us tanky enough so I could survive at least one hit and thus trade with Cancer to make the fight a little bit faster. And we use the skill Frenzy Dust because the increased melee speed is really nice to have, as well as the movement speed, just so we can stay next to Cancer, and when he jumps away we can just chase him down so super fast. For our amulets and rings, we use Butcher's Fetish because we're going to be doing every attack as a charged attack to proc Fault Line from Stonebreaker, and the crit chance and the crit damage are just some of the best bonuses that you can get out of your amulet slot. We're going to be using Burden of the Gambler because we're not going to be able to weak spot him. As I mentioned, I did try Boar, but it ended up not being worth it. Akari's Warband because we are going to keep it up most of the fight. We self-proc it at the beginning, but then we dodge the shockwave that Cancer does, so it should be up basically the whole, if not the whole fight, and this is just beautiful, 15% crit chance and crit damage. Now this time we actually slot Bisected Ring to get infinite stamina, because otherwise, even with putting everything we can into stamina, recovery, more stamina, etc., we cannot overcome the need for stamina. The melee attacks just take too much, so we need the infinite stamina, and we could try to pop Quilted Heart, but we would need multiple Quilted Hearts to make up for Bisected Ring. And we use Flyweight Sting here, and that's one of the reasons we have just about no armor on, so our weight is 0 with the perk from Challenger that it decreases our encumbrance by 10 to get 25% more bonus damage from Flyweight Sting. You could slot Probability Cord, but I found that I was doing a little bit more consistent damage with Flyweight Sting, and so I stuck with that. For our Relic and our Fragment, I was trying a few different hearts, such as Quilted Heart to get infinite stamina, but it only lasts 10 seconds, so I found it not being worth it, and then said I'm actually not going to use relics for the whole fight. For the Relic Fragments, melee damage, crit damage, and crit chance, because these are the things that are going to be increasing our damage on this build the most. As usual, for whatever reason, melee speed does not seem to be working as much as it should, so melee damage seems to outpace it, at least in my testing. For our traits, Strongback comes with Challenger, Potency comes with Alchemist, so we get those. And then we have Fortify, Untouchable, and Barkskin and Siphoner, just to try to keep ourselves a little tanky and avoid attacks better, keep our health topped off if we ever lose it. Vigor as well for that. Then we have Glutton just for consumable use speed, which actually didn't end up being a big factor. Swiftness, just to be able to chase Cancer down for most of the fight. You can slot whatever you like. To be honest, none of these traits are super integral to the build. For our concoctions, we use 4 of them. I decided to use bark extract. This is probably the worst one that I equipped, and you should probably use something else, but it just increases your armor value by 30. I used chilled steam just to get extra movement speed, because at the beginning of the fight you have to make up so much ground on Cancer, as well as during the fight you have to stay next to him. I used dark cider just for the extra health and movement speed. It gives you extra stamina, but we have bisected rings, so we don't actually benefit from that. And then I used Mudtooth Tonic just for a little bit extra health, and it actually lets us survive some hits that we would otherwise not be able to live through. For our consumables, I throw a couple Brightstone grenades, one at the beginning of the fight in the buffing sequence just to proc Akari's Warband, and then one at the beginning of the fight to get the extra 10% damage bonus. And I also use Rocket Fuel, which increases fire rate and melee attack speed by 15%, and it lasts 40 seconds with our Alchemist trait buff. And as usual, I'm going to do a bit of a fight breakdown just to let you know what was going through my mind in the process of the fight. So at the beginning, we're going to do a buffing sequence where we just use rocket fuel and throw a Brightstone grenade off the wall and dodge it to self-proc Akari's Warband. Rocket fuel will last 40 seconds with our trait bonus and should last the whole fight, and gives us an increase to melee speed. And then, importantly, dodging our Brightstone grenade gives us Akari's Warband, which is crit chance. And then as we enter the fight, we're going to instantly throw another Brightstone grenade to get 10% extra damage on Cancer. Then switch to our Nebula and activate the mod, because it's just going to go and we're not going to have to do anything about it. And then we're going to run forwards a bit more and pop our Challenger skill, because that's 25 seconds and that should last the whole fight or thereabouts now. And then really quickly there you saw that I dropped my Frenzy Dust onto the ground, and then shot Nebula to get corroded effect, and then we just go to town on Cancer. And after a while of these charged attacks, he should try to jump away, and then we just run after him, dodge that, we have Akari's Warband back, we put Corrosive back on, and then we just go ham again. As you can see, I failed to dodge there and had to panic dodge twice, which is a bit unfortunate, which means I have to play a little bit more passive here because I don't have much health anymore. But it's not the end of the world, and I still get him in a very respectable time, at least in my opinion. Might not be the fastest thing ever, but I think it's good enough. And that's really the whole fight. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and maybe comment your favorite part about the build or any build ideas you have that I could use going forwards.